been almost 30 days or so since Google officially launched the Pixel 10 lineup, and the 10 Pro XL is the best of the bunch. What have I learned since using this as my default device? Well, here it is, 30 days post-launch. You know the drill though, hit that subscribe button first and foremost, as we are the home of Pixel content on YouTube, from the devices, the software, and everything else in between. You know it makes sense, come and join the crew, hit that subscribe button. Right out of the gate, Google's decision to stick to 99% of the same design seems a bit like a great one, mostly because this has allowed the company to address a few things that were probably needed a little bit of attention to detail or attention post Pixel 9 release. I think the downside here is that all of these little changes, at least from afar, seem really inconsequential to the untrained eye, but when they're all combined, there are some really interesting upgrades to the formula that received a lot of plaudits last year. I'm actually sort of glad that Google has actually settled on this design for another year as well. Looking back at previous models, it felt like your Pixel could change for the sake of it, or lots of areas of a Pixel would change for the sake of it, and that really isn't that necessary now they've settled on this design. I'm still annoyed there's no backward compatibility for accessories like cases and covers, but you'll have to test them out for yourself, as not every single accessory is completely incompatible. But yeah, it's something you're going to have to deal with if you happen to upgrade, which I don't think many of you should anyway. For me, adaptive tone has vastly improved the display experience of the Pixel 9 lineup. This is something I didn't anticipate coming in, especially over the past month or so. It's been really obvious to me. It's nothing new on smartphones, but it does work exceptionally here on the Pixel 10 Pro XL. Not to mention, I think there's an added bonus as it really does enhance the experience with Material 3 Expressive, as things like the colors that your device chooses as part of its theme definitely pop a little bit more throughout the day. And at nighttime, I'll also state that the dark mode has fewer problems with green tinting or blooming around the edges, something that a lot of phones suffer from, even the iPhone suffers from this. It just means that blacks and deeper colors are just not as diluted on this screen, which is an excellent screen. There's no denying that it's an excellent screen. It does seem like a small change on the face of it, but I like that there's this, as I say, extra attention to detail and small improvements every single release. If we just put that out there anyway, it just means greater leaps for people who happen to upgrade every few years, which again, I think most of you should do that. Anyone who has last year's phone, definitely don't upgrade. One thing I didn't also anticipate is the enhanced speakers. They really do give audio so much more oomph when you're watching videos, or like me, listening to podcasts without headphones when you're out and about your house. The display and speakers are a real match made in heaven. I think it's something that, as I say, I hadn't really anticipated, because it's not something that you think of before going in. And I'm not saying that the Pixel 9 had bad speakers in any way, shape or form, but now there is just a real extra depth and richness to every sound that pumps out of this phone that was kind of missing on the 9 Pro XL for me. Right out of the gate, I will say music and spoken word are the most obvious areas of improvement, but the highest volume levels seem better than they were on last year's phone. There's no tinniness, plus there's a little more nuance in apps like YouTube Music when at the highest volume totem. It's not all that important if you keep your phone on silent all the time or listen using Bluetooth headphones or speakers, but it is something that hopefully people do care about. Another tangible benefit to that is that when you're on a call, you can actually hear people more clearly through the earpiece, and even more so when you're on loudspeaker. It's not something you should do in a crowded space, but I do think the change is going to be very welcome to anyone looking at this device. And when I'm typing and tapping, I will say I feel a minor difference in the haptics. I don't know if this is placebo effect in action, but it feels like there's at least a minor increase in the Z-axis or Z-axis vibration. I mean, I will say that could be down to Material 3 Expressive, as it does add more vibration in system areas, so it could simply just be this UI improvement and completely unrelated. Maybe though we can get more options like Oppo and OnePlus phones to tune haptics on a Pixel at some point. I really would love to play around with how vibrations feel on my Pixel 10 Pro XL, because yeah, this is it's not as good as it gets, but it's very close. And after a month, I actually thought the initial awe of Pixel Snap aka MagSafe would have dulled, but no, honestly, it's awesome to be able to go lightweight with my phone. The next generation of Pixel Snap on Pixel 11 though, this is something after a month of use I can tell definitely needs stronger magnets in the phone itself. Cheaper accessories or poor quality accessories can slip or slide off the back of your phone or case if the magnet's weak, and the company's cheaped out on that. So yeah, you need good magnets that'll attach firmly and safely, but there are options from our channel sponsor here, Spigen, who have kitted me out with a whole wealth of accessories that do take advantage of Pixel Snap, because for the first time, all of Spigen's Pixel cases now integrate with MagFit. So from top to bottom, you will have that option. You don't need to choose between a secure phone or that wider accessory ecosystem for the first time. And to me, that's absolutely huge, because I hate having bulky pockets. So if I'm feeling daring, I can slap on a color matched wallet so that the NanoPop case, which is my current favorite, is the perfect companion. Usually I sort of go for something simple like the Tough Armor case, which is a really good option anyway for any phone out there, but it's basically a bona fide classic at this point. But the touch of yellow, I think, adds a flash of extra color that maybe the past couple of years has been missing from the Pixel series, at least since the colors went a little bit more corporate. I've also recently ditched the Pixel ring stand in favor of that Spigen OMAG ring. For starters, it's stronger, it's more durable, it actually sticks to metal surfaces as well, and it's my gym companion of choice for tracking my sets or checking my form because it can stick to equipment, which I think is way less invasive than a tripod in a public space like this. And when I'm at my desk, I've been using the OneTap phone stand, which is a stand that is Qi 2 certified, so it means you'll get them fast charge rates on the Pixel 10 Pro XL. Plus, because the Pixel stand itself doesn't support the Pixel 10 and the Pixel Snap charger doesn't have any inbuilt cooling, I actually worry less about my phone overheating because this does have built-in fans. As I say, I think it's great having these options with or without a case. The beauty of Pixel Snap is that Spigen actually has a ton of existing accessories that you can pair with your phone, so 100% play around and find something that you like. I also want to recommend the new Illumina Core screen protectors. I'm using one on my smaller Pixel 10 Pro because I don't like to use a case on that smaller device. It's completely full coverage, feels about as close as a real glass as it possibly gets, and the foolproof installation process really does make it well worth it for screen protection. You can find some of the links to these down in the description below, as I highly recommend them. Everywhere else, I have to say I can't complain that this is the Pixel 9 Pro XL again, or Pixel 9 Pro XL Plus, I guess again. But with that added attention to detail thrown in for good measure, I'm really glad Google is refining their devices rather than trying to reinvent them this year. The huge question mark and something that's a little bit confusing is if, and this is a big if, the wealth of AI additions to the Pixel 10 series start to work as they're advertised, then I do think the experience will improve drastically day to day with this new phone lineup. Right now, I do think things are a little bit fragmented in that we have some that are working as intended, plus a few that only work, well, the only way to describe it is randomly. Take, for example, Magic Q. When it works, it's excellent. Most of the time, though, it kind of sits dormant and barely gets involved with proceedings. I'm seeing it, though, more and more often in the wrong places. For instance, Google Maps will surface a suggestion I don't necessarily need at that point in time. It is way better in areas like Google Messages, when the person you're chatting to happens to ask you a question. I do think this hands-off approach does feel more natural, but maybe we could adjust the settings to be a bit more aggressive at surfacing some on-device information, provided that you are comfortable with doing so. All of this does work technically on-device, nothing sent to the cloud. But one thing I have noticed is that Magic Q has improved drastically post-launch, and I hope that continues to be, at least to get better and work outside of Google's first-party applications. I barely use most of these and want to see more places where it'll jump in, potentially save me a search or surface something that I need. ProRes Zoom has also been a really confusing function. Although it's camera-based, it's still powered by AI as it inserts information that isn't there, but sometimes it can take a blocky photo, at least turning it into something that is truly memorable, as it were. Being realistic about what it can do is also, or what you can expect it to do, is a really good thing in my opinion, especially in the 30 or days that I've been using this. You are really meant to experiment with this function, and I feel like Google giving you the original plus the AI enhanced shot subtly reiterates this when you're in the Photos application. When I'm out and about and I see a squirrel, for instance, when I'm walking my dog, I feel that need to take a photo, which is something I didn't necessarily anticipate. From within a range of about 20 to 30 feet, I do think you can get some stellar shots once the enhancement is applied. Things like fur and intricate details are, well, they're revealed within the photo, when in actuality, they're actually added after that shutter is pressed. This is why I'm really confused with ProRes Zoom, as I'm telling myself it's not what the camera was able to capture, but the end result is really impressive, and I'm torn about it. On the one hand, I love it, I love the results. On the other hand, is this something Google will utilize when I really want the company to add more to the next generation Pixel camera hardware system? Yeah, it's a confusing one, but I feel like it's a fine balance, and the company does really need to ensure that not every hardware shortcoming has AI shoehorned in to try and fill in the gaps, or the gaps between what they're capable of and what they could be capable of with AI. And it'll end badly if Google tries to do this. Does it diminish how much I'm using ProRes Zoom? Well, absolutely not. I'm a full-on hypocrite with this feature, as I do think it is really good, especially, as I say, for wildlife photography. And I highly appreciate that ProRes Zoom isn't a fully destructive AI edit like on some phones. The original image, as I say, is preserved, which is great because you can decide whether to keep it or delete the original photo or just ignore the processed photo entirely. Something, yeah, Google has thought about this. You can tell that right away. Yes, AI. We talk about it all the time, but does it really make a big difference if the fundamentals are solid? Well, I think it doesn't here, because Material 3 Expressive is a perfect way to drive people back to your phones, or at least make people take a good hard look about what they're missing out on a Pixel phone. Take for instance Apple's Liquid Glass, which is a completely different ecosystem, but it is truly divided opinion online. It's a major shift, and it feels like the design change from a company that's actually going to look outside of their walled garden for ideas, inspiration, and all that jazz, despite being an outright industry leader. Whereas Google has just kept the heads down, fixed a lot of problems we had with Material U, and on the Pixel 10 Pro XL, Android 16 QPR one, which is a terrible name for this, it's Material 3 Expressive, I think it's a genuine triumph. It's only set to improve as well as Google prepares for QPR 2, which is set to release before the end of the year as part of Pixel Drop. Most of the biggest complaints have been addressed with Material U, with a few more set to be fixed by December 2025, something that, yes, we can anticipate, and it is effectively something that you are buying into, as it were. For me, Material 3 Expressive is ace, because animations are fully realized, playful touches make certain areas feel absolutely alive like they weren't before. I was excited before launch, and the stable version has rocketed the experience above any other skinned version of Android 16. Not that many are really available all that widely, and it is something that, for potential converts, that extra attention to detail paid will no doubt help you feel at home on your phone. You don't have to give up great design for fads or throwing out core accessibility functionality, but I've played with the iPhone 17 Pro Max since launch, and I think many people who are potentially looking at this device may be looking to make that switch. You're going to have a really uninhibited experience with your phone. I do though think this is the last year Google can get a pass for the lack of power in their homegrown SoC though. Tensor G5 or the Tensor G5 processor definitely lacks a distinct competitive edge, and this is more apparent this year than it ever has been before with a Tensor-powered phone, because they've never really been the top of the charts. Although, not to go and defend the chip too much, it's only really truly noticeable in certain or specific circumstances. I can't say, honestly, hand on heart, that the Pixel 10 Pro XL has ever really felt slow or sluggish, because that would be an outright lie. Maybe there are things that the OnePlus 13 or the Galaxy S25 can do better, especially in most cases, though I think you're not going to notice this. To me, from the outside, and having used a lot of Pixel phones, basically every single one since the Pixel, the OG Pixel, this feels like the Pixel 5 moment all over again. Make sure all the problems are fixed before the company can really start to make gains in their core system performance. I think resolving the major overheating problems that Tensor series has had since the first gen, I think realistically it makes the next wave, or means the next wave can be tuned, and I'm really excited for the future of the lineup, provided that we get parity with at least a previous generation of top-tier Qualcomm processors. In the here and now though, I've just not really pushed this chip personally. For me, gaming about as much as I do is Balatro, that runs fine. Images process a little bit slower than competitors. Maybe some apps could open a little bit faster, but the UFS 4.0 storage is really it's made the experience a lot more snappy than it was before. In some ways, Google has made it easy for you to decide on your next phone in a lot of ways. If you care about having a chip that is the top of the leaderboards, well, a Tensor-powered Pixel has never been the right choice for you anyway, so go look somewhere else. I actually switched over from the Galaxy S25 Ultra, and I'm still having a blast with this phone, and I can't say I expected that, having fell into a little bit of the rabbit hole of thinking that Tensor needed to be this top-tier chip. The problem here is that while I don't care as much about the performance shortfall as I expected, I just can't recommend this phone at its full $1,000 plus retail pricing, because you can get better deals at least in the coming weeks and months from other phones, and this phone specifically, as Google is notorious for dropping its pricing of its latest devices within a few weeks or within a few months of launch. We're already actually seeing some sales pop up right now. Expect that to get even more aggressive now that the iPhone 17 series has hit store shelves globally as well, because Google is hopefully going to go toe-to-toe with that. Yeah, they won't on sales, but they will on store shelves. I think to summarize, there is a good phone underneath here, underneath that exorbitant asking price. Arguably and objectively, this is the best Pixel to date, and it follows a couple of good years for the lineup. So while it might not receive necessarily huge fanfare, as it is just a slight upgrade over the predecessor, I've enjoyed it a lot more than expected. All of the little things have made a better experience in most key areas. And to be 100% transparent, I actually expected to switch back to the Galaxy S25 Ultra in just a few months' time. I actually doubt that I'm going to do that now, which is, again, a shock to me. I'm pleasantly surprised, and I really do think there's a lot to like, nay, a lot to love about the Pixel 10 Pro XL, so long as you know what you're getting and what you're not getting, which, yeah, is the price a little bit too high? Yes, but the optics of the lower pricing, probably a lower pricing than the iPhone, would maybe show a lack of confidence in their product from Google. I think Google is confident in the Pixel 10 this series, and in lots of ways, probably rightfully so. Is it the best phone? Not by a long shot. Is it the best Pixel, which is probably the key question here? Yes, but by an admittedly small margin, which is, yeah, it is what it is. Let me know what you think of the Pixel 10 Pro XL though down in the comment sections below. As I say, I've been pleasantly surprised with this phone, and that is something that I guess is kind of par for the course with the Pixel anyway. If you like the experience and you want something that's a little bit more slimmed down than other Androids out there, this might be the phone for you. But as I say, temper your expectations a little bit. For the key experience that you get, absolutely bona fide classic. For everywhere else, yeah, there are better phones out there. As I say, OnePlus 13, Galaxy S25 Ultra might have the edge for Western markets. But yeah, let me know what you think down in the comment sections below. Thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you later.